Welcome to another Power BI section brought to you by UrBizEdge. Okay, so today we're having our special guest, Abah. We're taking us on the topic how to build a value-driven Power BI report. So this session was brought to you by the collaboration between Enterprise DNA and UrBizEdge. So Enterprise DNA, the main objective is empowering Power BI all over the world to change the world. So about UrBizEdge, so UrBizEdge is a registered Microsoft Excel consulting, financial modeling, business intelligence, data analysis, and enterprise solution firm in Nigeria. We also specialize in helping companies and high-value professionals be on top of their business data. Also, we're also the developer of some Nigeria market data tools and also some Nigeria market data, also some stock data. So as you all know, we're also a training company here in Lagos, Nigeria. So this is the calendar of our upcoming training. So on the 23rd to 25th of June, we'll be having business intelligence and dashboard using Microsoft Power BI. Also on the 24th to 25th of June, which is on a Friday to Saturday, we'll be having big data analysis, Power Query, Power Pivot, and VBA in Excel. Also on the 25th to 26th, we'll be having advanced financial modeling and also a mock exam. So for some of you are interested in writing your AFM exams, it's just like a mock exam to prepare you for the exam itself. So I'll just give a brief description of our special guest. So Linson is a data analyst at SafeBoda. SafeBoda. Linson is a proactive data analyst with proven analytic and problem-solving skill. He's a proficient in business and data analysis, project management, business documentation, implementing user application testing, and providing technical support towards achieving business goal. He's passionate about using his experience in data analytics, market research, and business analysis to build solutions that improve customer experience and productivity. So with no further ado, I'll stop sharing my screen and hand over my section to Lincoln. So Lincoln, over to you. So I've stopped sharing my screen.
Okay. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So I'll say I'm glad to be here. Good evening, everyone. So I will just jump straight. I'll share my screen now. Please confirm that you can see my screen now.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay. So how to build value-driven Power BI reports. So this is what this webinar is all about, right? So I believe if you're here, it means that you've been able to build some reports, you've touched your hand, or you really work in an organization as a data analyst or as a Power BI developer. So that means you work constantly with reports, you build reports and do different kind of stuff with reports. But there's usually the problem where you build reports and people don't use your reports, right? Or you build reports and you notice that people use your report for a while and they fall back to using something else. For example, I've worked in multiple organizations and I've also worked with startups, right? So you build a Power BI report, and because they have multiple tools they are using at the same time, it's possible. They have Metabase, they have other tools like Google Data Studio, and then have Power BI there in the mix. And you build a report, but you find, I think it becomes heartbreaking when you find people doing the same thing they could have done on Power BI on other tools. And that is because they are not deriving value from the report. You get that now. They are not deriving value from the reports that you have delivered to them. So it's very important that as you build your reports, people adopt your report. That's the first thing you should be after whenever you are building reports. You're focused on what? Report adoption. Because if people don't adopt and stick to your report, it becomes a problem. Your reports will become redundant. You have reports that people are no longer using, and you will have to like maybe take the reports down, archive the reports, or you struggle to build adoption for other types of reports that you'll be deploying in the future. And that's not very good. So in this webinar, I'm going to walk you through the process of how you ensure that the reports you will be deploying will be adopted. I hope you get that really, so that by the time we are done with this webinar, each time you do the Power BI report, adoption will not be a problem. You know people are going to adopt your Power BI reports. Why? Because they're going to be deriving value from it. So I'm moving to the next slide. We said, how do I identify value-driven Power BI reports? I've listed some 6 key points here, but they are not all right. So you notice how, for example, now as you work as a Power BI developer or a Power BI data analyst, you tend to get multiple requests for different types of reports. Some of the requests you get are for ad hoc reports, and some of them are for reports that have to be automated, so they can come back to that report maybe every week, every Monday, every Tuesday, or it could be operational reports that your company uses every day. So one of the mistakes we do is that we just treat Power BI report as a report. Yeah, it's a report. You sit down on your laptop, you just do anything and you push it. They come back, they say, we need changes, we need modification, you do that also. So the problem is, if you want a value-driven Power BI report, then that report has to be treated as a product. Because this is the idea that you have project managers, you have developers, you see people, they treat the features, they treat their products with great care and mind. But when it comes to data analysis projects and reports, people don't necessarily do that. You get that, right? So that's why the key value, if you want to see any report where there's value being derived from it as a product, it means that every single thing that goes into that particular report has been thought through. It has gone through a vetting process. You don't just wake up and add a feature to a report. It has been vetted, it has been tested, it works fine. When there's quality, you get that. So as you're deploying your Power BI report, you know that whenever you make changes to it, it's going to affect how the organization makes decisions. It's also going to affect how people use the report, because a poorly designed report means that people won't be able to enjoy the report and there'll be no value for it. Number two, I mentioned the use of version control. This is very important. People don't do this, and from time to time, you're likely to run into problem. Because when you use version control for your reports, for example, let's say I write a complex SQL query that pulls data from SQL into Power BI, and I deploy the first version of my report. Due to new requirements, I have to go back to that report, maybe modify the query I've written before, and push a new update. If for some reason I did not keep track of the changes I have made in the query, there's a strong chance that the new report will break or something will go wrong, and there's no way for me to revert back to the previous version of the report that I have. You get that? So it's a mix of a full versioning or a bit of versioning, depending on how flexible your company is or depending on how you build your report. But it's very important that if you're using SQL queries, you also have your Power Query. You can go to the advanced section of the Power Query, copy the code, keep a copy of it. As you make changes in the future, you can always revert back to the previous versions of your report. Now, number three, I think number three is very important because a lot of people don't do this. And for example, if I should develop a Power BI report to publish it, someone should be able to use a different tool to reproduce the same result that I've produced. If I say the total sales for March is $14 billion, another person should be able to just write a query that pulls that data and confirms that the result I have in my Power BI report is accurate. This is where report validation and quality assurance comes into report development. Because if you should develop a Power BI report and you publish your Power BI report, you would want to make sure that your results are accurate. You want to ensure that, how do I put it? I read somewhere that it's very bad for a data analyst if someone else finds the errors in your report. Let's say you've written your DAX functions, you've written your DAX formulas, and you've been able to design a report, but there's a problem now where your results are not accurate, right? Someone who is writing a query maybe Postgres DB, or someone who is writing a simple SQL query should be able to reproduce your results. Then we have proper documentation. This cannot be overemphasized. From the beginning of a Power BI project, I'm not referring to ad hoc reports here. I'm referring to core Power BI project where you have to deploy an automated report online. So proper documentation is very important from the start of the report down to the end of the report. If you are caught in the mix and your report development process is not documented, you're going to run into a lot of problem because you're going to keep revising your Power BI report because you're, let's say for example, you're working in a startup or a very big organization, so you have meetings on what they want to see in the report, and there's no proper documentation. By the time you're done developing the report, they'll tell you, oh, we don't want to see this, we want to see this. We didn't say we want to see the total here, and you realize that you are in a situation where you have to be doing constant back and forth between the report owner, the person who requested for the report, and and the person that wants to use the report. So it's very important that you adopt proper documentation. Then there is justification for the report. You cannot just wake up and say, I want this report. There should be a justification for that report. So you realize that people will just, okay, I want a report on this and this. You realize some of these are just simple queries that you can just give them to run and they'll have the results they need. Because if there's no justification for your report, it means that your report will not be given any value. You get that. So if there's no justification, because let's say, for example, you're a data analyst and you found something in the business, you want to develop a report on it. Nobody is going to use that report. There's no justification for it. That means you're wasting valuable time, except if you want to do like a fun project. It makes sense to go there. Then there's a defined guidelines for report development, testing, and delivery into production. This is also very important because I think almost everything I've mentioned boils down to this last point, right? If you're developing a report, there should be guidelines around report development. There should be guidance around testing because if you're going to be pushing a report into production, there should be people who have tested that report. They are fine with the user experience. They are confident that your reports are not slow because there are instances where you will write some functions in DAX and they affect the performance of your report, or you have a large data and you've not been able to improve your model and you realize that your report is slow or the values are wrong. So with proper defined guidelines, you realize that the final report that is getting to the users, the consumers, is something that has been tested, has been tried and verified. And you realize that people have more trust in your report in the future. They won't scrutinize your work too much because over time you've been able to prove a sense of consistency in the quality of the work. So before I go forward, just want to verify that you can still hear me. I'm not speaking to myself.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
we
hear
can
you.
hear you. We can hear you.
I'm moving to the next approach because what I just explained is how to identify value-driven Power BI reports, right? And now we want to talk about why you should adopt a value-driven approach to building Power BI reports. I believe some of the points, while I was explaining the other points, I've already explained some of the things that you will find here. For example, I explained why it is effective and efficient because it's reliable. Because you have a process that works. So you start from development, you start maybe from requirement gathering, you move into development, from development, you move into testing, from testing, you show report into production. It works and it is effective. You won't run into issues that you can't control because you won't publish a report and someone will call you, take down that report. What you have there is nonsense. I don't want to see it. You're not going to run into situations like that. Then speed also, it gives you speed. But what I do with report development is that since I already have a defined process for pushing my reports, some of the processes are predictable, right? And then beside the fact that they're predictable, it means that I have put systems in place to support me. Putting the system in place may take time, But if the system is already defined, it gives you speed and accuracy, which is very important. You know, you need to push some things. And a value driven approach to building report means that you can use iterations to push your report, which means that I can choose to focus on revenue for this first iteration and push that. When I push revenue, I can focus on other things. This gives me speed, and I can also build anticipation, right? So you go to it's also easy to spot and correct mistakes because you're not pushing a full product at once. You're pushing the reports in batches, maybe features by features. You finish a category in the report, push that, it is verified, it goes into production, push another batch. What does happen is that what happens here is that whenever there's an error in your report, it becomes easy to spot that error. Whenever there's a mistake. Because I've been in situations in the past where do the Power BI report, push the report into production, especially when there is no reviewing and quality assurance because everything has to be on your decks. You now realize that maybe after a week or two, you start receiving complaints. Oh, this value is not correct. This is after like 2 weeks when you have already published the report. So, but if you're publishing your report in stages, you put stage one, um, the users are using it, you're pushing another stage later on, you're pushing an update to the existing report. Whenever an error comes into the report, it's easier to spot. Then it also encourages collaboration, right? Because in some reports are very large, some reports are very large. You may not be able to work on the report alone, or for some reasons you're going on leave, you want someone else to work on the report. When as you're doing this in batches, it's also helpful. That's why I spoke about documentation earlier. If there's proper documentation, someone can just refer to the documentation, understand some of the data formulas you've written, understand why you did some of the data transformations you did. Then you can now collaborate with other team members that can help you push this. Then it also improves the quality of the report. This is very nice. You're not working alone. You have people who are reviewing your report. Definitely, the quality of your report is going. Feedbacks are easy to manage, and because you are pushing your report in batches, you push an update this week, you push another update next week, or maybe every 3 days or so. You realize that you can manage feedbacks, right? As you're getting feedbacks from the reviewers, they're not reviewing the entire report to send you a very large document that you have to work with. You realize that your feedbacks comes in batches depending on the new updates that you've been able to push to production. Then you now realize that you can make easy changes because there are some changes. And one of the reasons I also advocate for a value driven approach is because by the time you push a full Power BI project at once, you realize that some of the changes that you will need to implement in that Power BI report, they just need you to just start your data modeling afresh, which is something you wouldn't want to do. We all know how tedious data modeling can be. You don't want to be in that situation. So going in batches ensures that whenever there's a need for a change, you can implement it early and you won't have to overhaul the entire Power BI report. Then I mentioned how you can deliver new features to your report in phases. And the good thing about this is that you can build anticipation, right? Like what I do in some of my reports is that I can just build a report, then in a section of the report, I'll just put a blank space. In that blank space, I'll just add coming soon. I'll just give it a title. And on the users, then maybe just add a little information here that gives them an idea of what they should see there. And that's very nice because like, oh, listen, okay, I see that I wanted to ask about this, but I see that you've added a coming soon section to the report. That means I'll be seeing it very soon. Yeah. In the next batch of updates, you expect that they will see that, and that's very good. And that thing again is consistency, right? There's consistency in the way you build and push your reports, and that's really good and amazing. So I would like to go to the next slide. And one more time, I want to confirm if you're still with me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. All right, thank you. How do I start? So we've received a request from the head of department that says we want an operation dashboard. For example, I work in a company that does both fintech and ride hailing, right? So it means that uh, sometimes you get large Power BI projects. It means that you're going to spend a lot of time to work on that project. And in my experience, not just now, but past experience as well, I find that most times people who request for reports, let's call them report owners. Report owners most of the time don't know how to request for a report, and that's the truth. They don't. That's why I was mentioned. That's why I mentioned earlier where you have to treat your Power BI report as a product, because by the time product owners want to write about a product, you see that there's going to be a proper documentation for each feature of the product, what they want to see, how they want to use it, right? And there's maybe a feature, a description of that feature, and stuff like that. You see a lot of things, and by the time you're requesting for a new feature, you have an understanding of what they want to see. But whenever people are requesting for a report, they say, just build me a report on this. So most times the mistake you will make is you will just assume like, okay, let me just do anything. You now realize that the reports you build no longer relevant to them. And that's a problem because you want to build a report they can use, but they are not able, most times they don't tell you what they want to see until you have spent a huge amount of time building the reports and they start telling you, oh, I don't want to see this. Can you take this away? Can you clean this? Can you adjust this? We want to see this. And you realize that your whole ideation, your design, your thought process has been scattered. You now have to start all over, or you have to start looking at your DAX formulas. With time, your data model becomes buggy because you now have numerous measures that you can't use. You have to start worrying about model optimization. You get the whole of that. So the first step in any Power BI project, I'm not referring to, I'll keep repeating myself. I'm not referring to ad hoc reports here. I'm referring to automated reports that people will keep using over and over and you keep pushing updates to from time to time. Is requirement gathering. You can't miss this. Thus, if a document is sent to you, if a simple request is sent to you, want you to build an operations dashboard, want you to build a ridership dashboard, want you to build a sales dashboard, don't just say yes and start building. You need to do a requirement gathering. It is very important because the document you are going to create or build from your requirement gathering session with the report owner and possibly the report users is going to form the ideas you use in building your report. Because if you assume anything on their behalf, you're going to find that it's very painful later on to start taking some of those things away from the report, right? So during your requirement gathering session, this is a sample document I use. It's possible you could find more fields here. So they want a report on sales, they want a report on production, on daily business operations. So your metric in that report, you're likely going to have multiple categories in that report. Then for each category in that report, you're likely going to have multiple metrics. What do you want to see? Do you want to see sales last month compared to sales this month? Do you want to see sales last year compared to sales this year? Do you want to see the number of active drivers last month compared to this month? Or do you want to see cross-service users, people who use the service and use another service? Do you want a trend? Okay, how do you want to show this? Then after you have your metric definition, you're also going to have a metric description. This is very important because from company to company, you realize that they may have the same metrics, but the definition of that metric may vary. And sometimes the definition of that metric may also vary from one department to another, which is why it is important that you have meeting with report owners because sometimes you realize that even within the same department, the definition for a particular metric may vary depending on what they are doing. So you cannot just take one and use to build a report because they'll tell you that the result of the analysis is incorrect. So this is why you have the metric description. For example, if you are looking at churn customers, for example, let's say you are doing a churn analysis, you're doing a cohort and retention analysis, and for one organization, you realize that based on the type of business model they have, you realize that the definition of a churn customer is different. maybe in a subscription based business model, maybe when it's time for the renewal of that subscription and the person doesn't subscribe. Another could be maybe if a customer is inactive for a period of 30 or 90 days, maybe a customer is inactive for like 6 months. So all these definitions are going to go into your document. Sometimes I call it the metric, what's it called? Metric definition document, right? Then you also, as they talk to you about these metrics, you will also start thinking about where you will get this data. Because not many organizations are not lucky to have a data warehouse where all the data sits in the data warehouse. You want to access the data, you have to go to that single source of truth, pull your data from there. So some organizations may have data seated in multiple sources. So you want to make sure that the metrics the users want are things you can actually pull. To realize with time that some of these metrics that the report owner is asking for, you may not even have access to the data right now, right? You have to request for access depending on the structure of your organization. Then maybe the contact person may just be one person that works in that department. So anything with regard to this report, you just have to meet the person like, okay, this metrics, how does it work? You just have to contact one person if you have issues. Then I also have the status column in my report in this requirement gathering document because the status helps me to track my progress. Okay, for this report, I've been able to finish all these metrics. I've been able to add these features. This is what is missing. This is what is in progress. And this is what is not in progress. Then you have notes. Notes could be as a result of the meetings and discussions you have with them. This is an iterative process. So usually when I have this requirement gathering document, we could meet every once or 2 weeks to talk about the report if the report is a very huge project. Because sometimes the report owners forget some of the things that they want to see in the report. So you, when they bring new updates like that, you want to add it and see where it fits best into your report, so that, and it is not also going to scatter your report design. Another important thing that is not listed here could be priority, right? So let's say you want to build a report and you realize that they tell you, okay, in the first batch of the updates, we want to see this key. These are the things we want to have. So you realize that you have to give those metrics and those features a priority. Give them a priority score, and the ones you can deploy later on will just go down and give them a lower priority. You get that? So if you're working on the Power BI, the reason you have issues with the Power BI project, the reason you struggle with a lot of back and forth with your Power BI project is because you don't have a document to guide you through the project. You just stand out, you take it, and you just do whatever you want to do, and you run into a lot of issues. So I'm pausing again just to confirm you're with me and to be sure there's no questions, so I can continue.
So no questions so far, so you can continue. Okay, awesome.
So if you see here, I say, and this document is aimed at giving you clear understanding of all the metrics that are to obtain your Power BI report. It also serves as a guide to the definitions of some of the business terms that will shape the type of data you will need and the formulas you will write. You get that? So based on the metrics you see here, you realize that, oh, I don't need this column. Because, for example, if you work with large data, let's say you work with a report that let's say working with the data from as far back as 2018, 2019, or maybe your business is heavy on activities. Sometimes you have as up to 50 million rows of data, 53 million rows of data. That happens with me. This is the type of business I work with. So I want to be sure of what I'm really pulling into Power BI from the database. Because sometimes if you pull in the wrong data, you have to go back again and wait before you pull in the data to extract, transform, push it into your data model. So this guides you. It keeps you from running into issues like that. And it also, so based on what you see here, you already have idea on, and I think writing this out also gives an understanding and ideas on the type of formula you're already likely to write together, so you don't run into issues. So the requirement gathering document or metrics definition guide, this is what I like to call it most of the time. So I can say metric definition guide for, I'll not put the name of the report, or I can say metric definition guide for ridership report. Maybe if it is a cohort analysis, for example, metric definition guide for customer cohorts, and retention analysis. I can always come back to this and see what is there whenever I'm building my reports, see if I'm missing anything. And someone cannot accuse me for missing out on metrics because we have it documented, right? So you see, so the metric definition guide is the result of one or more conversations with the report owner as the person that requested for the report. So these discussions may also reveal new data sources that you may need to be given access to. Let's say you don't have access, but there's a strong chance it happens from time to time, especially if you work in an evolving environment. So you realize that they want to report on the data you don't have access to. So sometimes you realize that, okay, based on the discussions you've already had here, now you can contact the data engineer or the report owner can contact the data engineer. The data engineer may have to like pull the data from wherever the data is sitting into the analytics DB. Then from there, you can now access that particular table and do your analysis. Other times, the table does not exist. The table is not there. So depending on the structure of your organization, you realize that if your organization works with an analytics engineer, the analytics engineer may need to create an entirely new table. Then you can now use that table to perform your analysis. And if your organization doesn't have an analytics engineer and you're in that capacity, you have access to create tables and all that. You just pass through the normal process and create your table. Then you can use that table for your analysis because it happens a lot. Personally, I prefer creating tables and views, important ones, the ones not just one-off tables, tables that are relevant to the business, that also helps you to understand the structure of your business. So you start creating new data models that will help you answer critical business questions. Because if you don't do that, you find yourself doing a lot of data transformation in Power, or you find yourself writing a very complex SQL query that will take a long time to run. So you put measures in place to ensure that by the time you're loading your data into the data model, the process is efficient, easy, and is fast. That way, you're going to enjoy your report development process. So let's say you've done the requirement gathering, you you look at the data sources, you see that you have access to data sources where you need to do everything. Now you have to start worrying about how to do your report, right? And how to design your report. What is the layout going to look like? So it's good to design your report and do all that, but I would strongly recommend that as you're building your report, the first thing that you need to do, you start from getting your data, you explore the data. Look at what I did here. I wrote get a sample data. If your data size is not large, you don't have to worry about getting a sample data. Just pull the whole Power BI and do whatever you want to do. But sometimes I want to test some ideas. I test them outside Power BI, for example. I just want to run a simple thing in Excel and just test a few things. Make sure I understand the data better. You exploit because as you start working with the data, you start noticing some discrepancies in the data. You want to validate the results. So you work a bit in maybe Power BI, Excel, you just go to SQL, not write SQL, you test it, and you're like, okay, this makes sense, this result is correct. Then you start validating your results. By the time you have an idea of what your report should look like, you can now start worrying about your report development. So people don't do this and they spend a lot of time in report development. And the reason is simple, is because you just you got a request, you say, oh, no problem, I can do it. Run over to the data source, push the data into the data model, and start then all of a sudden you start realizing that a lot of things are not working, things are not going according to plan. And before you know it, you've expended the whole week on a report that you cannot deliver. Okay? So if you're working with large data, I recommend you get a sample data, work with the data, understand it, make sure you get some of the little any problem you face, you are able to solve it. Then there are sometimes you also see new things because if you're in an evolving environment, new business terms will come from time to time, and some of those modifications affect the structure of your data. You want to make sure that you're able to address them before you start developing your report. So I always recommend when it comes to your report design, I always recommend adopting a simple and effective design layout. So can also, this is supposed to be a team, not create a company team, not create a company team if you don't have one. So if your company has a color, and and most times you may have to speak to the product guys. If there's a product design team in your company, or if you have the developers, you speak with them. Mostly they have these packages, and you can get the team, you can get the color codes from them, and you build your team. So before I continue, I would like to show you how I go about port layout design. Let me just do this. So one time, what I just do, I just go to Google, I just do dashboard. You can just do dashboard ideas. Google, you get that right? But sometimes you want to get ideas, you want to get some inspiration. You see what other people have done. From there, you can just go to dashboard ideas. If it's a sales dashboard, you can say sales dashboard. And sometimes you can pick ideas from multiple reports. You don't have to pick idea from one report, right? So you get these ideas here. Just like I have to log in. I don't know what. Log in. Oh, let me just go back to. I don't remember if I signed up. And let's use this. Good. So you get some simple ideas from Dribble here. And mind you, you don't have to pick a single dashboard and use it. You can pick ideas from multiple dashboards. Okay, um, let me go to the image, image tab, and here. So let me zoom in. Now you have these, notice that they use image. You see how they do it. Okay, how can I replicate this? Then anything you don't, for example, this card may not be relevant to your own case. You don't need to pick it up, you can discard it. So you find a report design that appeals to you, then you now come to Power BI. You can combine ideas from multiple reports. For example, this report here has indicator that tells you where you are, dashboard, students, teachers. You realize, so it's clear that as you keep changing from one of these down, you're likely to see this white bar changing. So this is a nice report idea. You can pick it up and look at how you can implement it in your own report. So I also recommend that you should not worry about the level of complexity and productivity of the report, right? The report doesn't have to be very complex. No, what's important is that the users can derive value from your report. That's the most important thing. It doesn't have to be very complex. Just find basic things. But if you have the skills to build a complex report, then a value-driven approach is also good because the process is iterative. It means that we can push something basic today, and next week push an update that adds a little level of complexity to your report. You get that? So this is where I get my ideas from. I think another place you can also get ideas from is Pinterest. So just as sometimes Pinterest can be very crazy because you get a lot of designs there, right? So I also get ideas from Pinterest, something like, okay, this is good. And I also like Dribble because the color code is there sometimes. We can all you have to do is just go to Pinterest. If you're looking at the dashboard, the color code is down here. Thing that I will have to, I just have to log in. I really want this to work because I want to show you how colors, right? So I'll just go to search, type dashboard. report. And you have this, for example. It's quite slow. Like the network here is misbehaving a bit. Okay, so I believe you should be able to hear me. I want to confirm that you can still hear me.
Yes, you're audible. We can still hear you.
I'm looking for a report that has it. Yeah, this is it here. So if you pick a sample report on Dribble, for example, and let's say, for example, you like some of the things you see here. For example, the background color is a bit grayish. I don't know if that's the right word. Then you have a dark color here, you have a blue color, and you would just want to replicate something like this. So when you come to Dribble and you hover over it, you realize that you have all these colors here, and you have, so you can easily just click on this, right? You can see the color, see the color here, the color, you can use it to do whatever you want to do your report. And you can, yeah, that's it. You just have to click it. In the past, I used to see the color code. I can actually copy it here, or you can actually download the palette if you want. So I know how to use it. So mostly I just click and copy. You can now bring that into your report. So this is all about the report design and the ideation, because whatever you do, it has to be easy to navigate. The filters shouldn't be messing up with your report, right? But you learn how to keep your filters in one place and work with that. So going back to, just to be sure there's no question, right?
So no questions so far. If you have any question, you can also drop it in the chat box, please.
So no question. I'm moving. So the next stage is to start building your report. So this is the beauty of it, all right? You're no longer trying to figure out something. You already know what you need to do. You already have an idea on what to do, and you already have a plan in place to guide you on what to do. This means that you're not lost. You get it. You know what your report users want to see, you're able to document it. You know where to get the data from. You know how to get the data, tested your analysis, and you know what works and what doesn't work. Now you can just use the metrics as a guide to start building your report. And this is the second one is actually just a tip. I think you should always keep in mind whenever you're building Power BI report. So a lot of people make the mistake of doing the data transfer Power BI, even using Power Query, for example. So what you don't know most of the time is that some of the actions you take Power Query um, pulls the data from your source multiple times, depending on the type of actions you're working with. So if you can push the data transformation to the data source, for example, you're using SQL, you do a lot of your transformation in SQL before you pull the data into Power Query. It's going to be very helpful. It's going to help your model to be fast. Which is why I spoke earlier about creating new tables, especially if it's not just for that report, but will be useful in answering other business questions. It's a good idea to create new tables. And personally, I don't do views because views can be slow. So to table, you build a model that helps you get your data. Then, if it's inevitable, then you can now come into Power Query, do a transformation. Or finally, maybe you forgot something, there's a new requirement, you can now start working with calculated columns for the report. But working with the metrics definition guide helps you and saves you from a lot of darkness. Then when I started, I mentioned the use of version control. It's very important. To be able to save your SQL queries, your when you go to your M code, right? When you go to advanced Power Query, M code you have there, just save it. You may think you don't need it until one day someone else works on that report and messes something up. Now your report is refusing to refresh. You can't remember what you did, but now you have your code somewhere. You can just go back to the code you backed up in GitHub copy the code and paste it here, and you're safe. So I'm going to move to testers and reviewers. So don't do this mistakes. Most times people will tell you, "Oh, I trust you. You're very good at what you do." Make sure to test the reports before you go into production. Either you test it after building your report, you can leave it for a day or two, come back to the report. You can have multiple workspaces if you don't have a premium license, right? Let's say you're working with a company that doesn't have a premium license, because with a premium license, you have deployment pipelines, right? So you can do that, but you can do your own deployment manually. You have a development workspace, you have a testing workspace, and then you have the production workspace. The production workspace in this instance could be the name of the department that needs that report, right? So that's where it's very important. So these stakeholders now, right, the people from the primary department, should be able to come to your report, test it, maybe like 2 or 3 people, look at the report. Oh, this value is not tallying with what we have. Because if there's a need for a report, it means that there's already an existing process for getting that result. Just that that process is not efficient. Now you want to use Power BI to automate that process. And the process can be efficient and reliable. So you realize that they'll start comparing the results from the report you built with what they already have. And you want to make sure that the results are correct before it goes into production. Then they go to test. They're going to test the report and send their feedback. Then feedbacks could range from user experience. For example, you could have placed the filters. So there could be an issue with your filters. Maybe your filters are not working fine. Maybe the buttons you created, the icons you've added to your report are not giving the needed result. You will also get all those feedback. Then on your own, you could also review the responsiveness of your report. For example, recently I built a report, and while I was working with the report was there in the development environment. I started noticing some lags. When it got to the testing environment, I now realized that, oh, this is very slow. And the reason for that is because of some of the functions that I use in developing that report. So you have functions like intersect, except, all functions that returns the table. So you're careful as you start building your Power BI report, as much as you can, avoid functions that return the table, because if your data size is large, let's say you're working with millions of records, and imagine that while your users are operating with the report, millions of records are returned in memory before you now get this finalized or summarized report. That's not really good. You know that the performance of your report is going to be very poor, right? So you want to also take care of situations like that. From there, you can now push your report into production. Push your reports into production. This is where your end users get to see the reports. This is where you push your future updates. This is where you start pushing future iterations. Or maybe you want to add, maybe for a start, you design the report without icons, or you want to add icons. Maybe there's drill through, you didn't add drill throughs because, and I think something I didn't add to this feature is the part that I'm going to mention now. After pushing your report into production, you try to make your report immersive. So a lot of people spend a lot of time adding colors and beautifying their report, but the report itself is not immersive in nature. You get that right? Because there are no drill tools, there are no report page tooltips, there are not other forms of tooltips. You understand? So all these things are not there, and your report is not immersive. You run into issues, and you realize that people just use it. Okay, yeah, that report. But you want your report user to spend more time in your report, because that is how you drive adoption. That is how you keep bringing them back, because when they come to the report, they get more than the requested for. So when I was a good immersive experience, filters, bookmarks, report page tooltip, and other things I think I'm supposed to add here. So I'll just stop here for now. I believe I'm already out of time, so we can answer some questions.
Awesome, 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 awesome. Okay, so I think we're chat box. So someone is asking, Michael is asking, how do you do versioning for Power BI as a binary file?
Okay, so presently there's a tool, right? But I don't want to recommend it, that particular tool, because it's not yet approved by Microsoft. So any changes in Power BI updates could affect. So what I will recommend you with the binary files is that let's say you have a report, you publish the first version of your report, and just save that file in a GitHub account. It probably the company GitHub account. If you have a data team, that means the data team should have an account. Use the data team account, for example. And what you do with time is that after a period, maybe after like a period of 6, 7, 8, or 9 months, you realize that the previous versions become irrelevant, right? So you can do away with those ones and work with the last three recent versions. Then there's this guy, Power BI tips. Check Power BI tips online. He has a solution that works with SharePoint. So all you have to do is you go to Power BI tips, Power BI tips, then do Power BI versioning, right? Or version control. So you have a solution that works with a mix of SharePoint, your OneDrive, because you're going to be saving your files in OneDrive, your Power BI files in OneDrive. And when you do that, there's a way you design it in such a way that your versioning happens at the same time. You don't have to worry about that.
Mm. Okay, so Mikey also asked them, how do analysts in short-staffed company act making time for these processes you mentioned? I mean, the huge workload they struggle with daily.
Can you ask that question again?
Okay, so Michael is asking them, how do analysts in short-staffed company act making time for these processes you mentioned? Admin having a different huge amount of workload.
Oh, yeah. So this is
Or you can check
unfortunately
the chart. You can check the chart. Okay.
for some reasons I can't see the chat.
Okay,
I
okay, okay.
don't
Don't worry.
know why.
Just continue. But you got the question, right?
I got the question. I got the question.
Okay, awesome.
So let me answer your question this way. In a short staff environment, it means that you're going to be getting a lot of work on your desk. Another issue with a short staff organization again, sometimes there's no boundary between the work of the business analyst. Because sometimes they'll bring IT stuff to you because yeah, data analyst and IT guy, a tech bro, a tech yeah, and all that. So the issue is that you just have to find a way to design a system that works for you. You get that?
Okay.
You have to design a system that works for you. That's number one. And how do you design a system that works for you? The number one way is about managing expectations and deadlines. Okay? So multiple people can come with reports. I want this report today because there's a way they do this stuff in a short staff organization. Realize that sometimes people don't even ask for a report until they need it later in the day. Like, oh, I need this report. I want this report to be ready before the end of business. But we want it automated. I need it instantly. So this is where you have to make people understand that you have other things going on. And if they want this report, you have to bring reports earlier. Then you start setting the deadline. You have a tracker. So what we do in a situation where we're short staff, what we do was have a request tracker, right? So if even where I work currently, you have a request tracker. Your data team, that's the only way you're going to manage expectations. That's the way you can put a system. Get a request tracker where someone is asking for your report. Is this a new report? Is this an update to an existing report? Is this a one-off request? You get sometimes it may not be a request, sometimes it may just be a data pull. Just want you to pull data. That's first step. Put a system in place. So when they expect you, by the time they do that, they're going to see the expected dates. They're going to get that report. What comes to the department, and because you already have a system in place, you can manage expectations. Then number two, in your organization, you also have to make deliberate um deliberate effort in data literacy, right? As much as you're teaching people about data, you can teach them simple things like how to pull. Maybe for each team, for example, or for each department, you should have like a data champion or a data professional or data ambassador, either a data ambassador or a data champion in each department. So the responsibility of that data champion for that department is that person is able to write simple SQL queries, for example, if you pull data from the database, that person is able to do a little drag and drop. So I think personally for any data team, part of your KPI for the year is to teach people how to how do they call it? to become like citizen data professionals in the organization, right? They're able to just take data, do a simple calculation in Power BI. You don't want them to build a very beautiful, to do simple things that they can now do, publish, and just put in their Power BI, PowerPoint presentation, for example. So they can do simple analysis on their own. So those are the two. If you prioritize those two things at the start, it may not really, it may be hectic, but with time, as everything settles in and people accept the system, it's going to work for you, and you have time to make things.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So Emmanuel's hands is up. Emmanuel, you can unmute yourself or speak.
Hello, everyone. Good evening again.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Good evening.
Linson, for this session. But I have a minor question. I don't know if it's beyond. It could be beyond the scope of today's session. But I've been working with Power BI for a couple of months now, and using the Power BI free option. So my problem right now is that I see that there are some limitations to Power BI free version, and I'm trying to move on to the Power BI Pro. But my question for this is, how do I get to Power BI Pro? Like, can I buy directly? Like, I don't know how to work over this. This could be beyond the scope of this session, but I don't know if you could answer it for me rapidly. How I can actually purchase Power BI Pro license faster.
Okay, for purchasing the Power BI, I think it depends on your use case, right? If you're not using it for business purpose, it won't make sense to buy a Power BI Pro license. You can actually just get a developer account. That means if you're just using it to learn, you understand that if you're just learning, you can get a Microsoft developer account and you can have access to Power BI Pro with a developer account. You can use it. But if you're using this for business, then what you can do is to contact a vendor, right? So there are vendors that do this, they help you to purchase your Power BI Pro license. I know some people want to pay directly, but most times I notice that some of these vendors have discounts. You understand? If you're getting a license through a vendor, they'll tend to give you a discount, maybe if you purchase like one, two, or three. But if it's something you can afford, you can do that. And if you have a card, you can also pay directly. But I recommend going to a vendor.
Can I find these vendors online?
So, Mike.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I'm asking if I could find these vendors online.
Yeah, of course, of course. I don't want to market for anybody. That's why I said vendor.
Okay. So Mike has also dropped the link to Microsoft developer account in the chat box.
Okay. So I'm still having quite a bit issue regarding this, because let me paint this scenario, the picture well. So I work with a company. We just started using Power BI, right? And I'm actually the one in charge of this Power BI service. We are trying to purchase the Pro license because we've already used the free version, the free trial for 90 days, and it's over. It's ended. Now I'm trying to purchase a new a Pro license, and they're asking me to have the Microsoft 365, or have the E5 or E6. Like, it's too much work, and I don't really understand where to begin. So if I could have guidance on that.
Yeah. So again, it still boils down to a vendor, right? Vendors that manage this stuff. That's their job. So what you have to do now is to can get multiple with the vendors on what you want to do. For example, in your organization, you may say, okay, we just 10 pro licenses, just 5 pro licenses. The vendor will tell you the number that is possible. Talk to them, and you also discuss the amount. Get through them to pay the procedure license for you, right? Then you don't necessarily need an office 365 license. I think there's a way to, okay, I think there's just basic Azure setup. You can get your just the Azure Active Directory, just simple stuff. The Power BI license. Since you already have it, you already have people within your organization doing stuff, it's not going to be hard. You will need a vendor so that you rip you off. Get them to send you the quotes and you'll be fine.
Okay, can I maybe also attempt to give do you hear me clearly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. So Also, you can buy, if you really want to buy yourself, you can also buy yourself. The only thing is that in a company, only admin accounts or accounts that can make purchase can buy. So if you are not the admin, you can't buy. So when I say admin now, even your currently existing free one is under the umbrella of a Microsoft domain. That's the sense of whenever you use any of the Microsoft Office family related products, you instantly have an Office account, an account that if you log into office.com, it will recognize that you exist. So that office.com now, right? People who their own accounts are admin, they see more options. They see an admin option. In that admin option, they can make purchase. You can decide that only two people need the Power BI license, and you buy only two licenses and you allocate to the two people. So you can buy standalone. Alternatively, too, you can buy the E5. E5 is the lowest that comes with Power BI, but it's on the high side, like you said. I think it's about $40 thereabout per user. So it's a case of, are you guys comfy with the $10 per user, and maybe not so many people need it, and then you can buy standalone. But if you know that the other suite of tools might be worth it, it's a lot cheaper if you buy E5, because if you know you'll be using some things on Teams, on Power Platform, and it's a few of other tools, plus even the OneDrive, larger storage environment and all, then you might be, in the end, the company will still spend. So it's just maybe looking for that minimum spend that will achieve what you guys want. That I think is a tricky part. And as for acquiring the license, it's simply the account that has the because even for a vendor, when they will buy for you, it's the same thing they will need. They will need to also be able to tie it to the admin account, so they will not be able to transfer that license they've got to that account, and then they are the approved billing people. So they will be billed. You might know, you won't even know what they are billed. They will just charge you whatever way they want to charge. So that's another way, at least for my own organization and a few other organizations. We just bought it ourselves, and it was straightforward. So there is that option.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry,
you, Michael.
Linson, I want to do a small check. So I noticed something. Sorry that if there's background noise where I am. I plugged my mic to the wrong PC, and the other one is not me presenter yet. So I noticed that you're using a Bluetooth headset, right?
Yeah.
The Bluetooth headset is affecting your audio negatively. So every other
Oh,
person,
really? Someone
yes, they
said
are much louder than you, clearer. The thing is chopping off your low frequency audio. So, but we hear you. I just wanted to say, nah, I'm sure. At the point, I was asking if everybody could hear where they say yes. But when everybody else started speaking, I knew that, okay, the difference is significant. But we hear you clearly. I just wanted to say it. So maybe uh, if you have other sessions, you might want to test prior all the different headsets you have, like
yeah.
tell the other person test and tell you which one, because I now saw that maybe it's but we hear you loud and clear. I just wanted to say you can test to be sure.
I'll
But
still do
thanks
Okay.
my
a lot. Wonderful and value packed. No one has come with this kind of angle to it. It looks like a lot of work. I'm not happy if some of my bosses or someone from a client they'll be like, they are going to penalize Michael. They'll say, oh yeah, Michael, where are all this documentation? Where are all these things Linson is asking that should be there? And you're right. It's just that there are always like a lot of work to do sometimes, and you know, we all just do it by the fly of the in emails. We just put the stuffs there, sometimes not having a proper documentation. But thanks a lot. I don't know if other people have questions. Thanks very much.
Okay. So we'll be running up very soon. So the seven is who asked you, Can you tell us how you start your own data analytics or data engineering journey, and also what advice you have for people just starting out in the data field? I pick up my question.
Yeah. So about how I started. Um, okay, let's say the point is I wanted to become a web developer, right? I wanted to become a web developer, but at the time I couldn't find the right community to support me. So I already had a background in statistics. I did both my ND and HND in statistics, right? I was really good. I graduated with a distinction when I did my statistics. Like, okay, let me think about it. Because at the time, I didn't know of anything named data analyst. What I knew of was what's it called again? Statistician. Yes. What I knew of at the time was just statistician. So I just went online, was searching what kind of job you can do, and I saw data science, data analytics. I was like, oh wow, this is fun. And I was checking, and that's how I got a scholarship. I got a scholarship to take a course, and in the challenge, I passed. So the challenge alone was helpful. I got the scholarship, and I think a few weeks after I started applying for jobs because I was already rounding up my service. It was towards the end of my service. So I started applying for jobs, and I was lucky to get my job with a marketing and advertising company in Bagada. That's GDN. So I applied and we went for the interview. The lucky part was that most of the basic things I read, like data preparation, data wrangling, data manipulation, some basic SQL, Excel, those things that I read, like the basics were the things they were asking about when I got there. I think in that interview, one of the persons that came to the interview with us were like 5 or 6. The person sat down and looked at the questions they asked. The person like, oh, wow, this guy fuck up this one, this guy and the person now left. Because the person couldn't answer one or two questions. So I think I was glad because I prepared right. I was able to start studying. That scholarship was helpful. I studied and all that. So I got my first job as a data analyst that year. And from there I became a business solution analyst and consultant. From there, that's with a consulting firm here in Lagos. I worked with what's it called again? Nigerian Communication Commission, all these big companies, all these pension managers, and it was really fun because it opened your eyes to a lot of stuff. From there, I went into health insurance. From consulting, I went into health insurance, worked in health insurance for like close to 2 years. Then from health insurance, I now work in IT firm. So we do fintech in Rwanda, and we do fintech and transportation, not Rwanda rather, fintech and transportation, what we call Uganda. Then we do transportation, we do airtime and some other stuff in Ibadan. So that's my journey. That's how I started. It was just interest. I needed to do something. I already had the experience on my NG when I was searching for a job and nobody was looking at my CV. So I just got a skill and did that. So what I would recommend to anyone starting right now is that if you can pay for a structured course, pay for it. That's the truth. You can pay for a structured course, you should pay for it. And if you can also find students who have taken that course before you, try to find their review, see what they say about that course, you take it. Then because I feel like self-paced learning is nice, but if someone should be the structure for you, it's even better. Because sometimes with self-paced learning, you may not know what to learn next. And there's a lot of resources. Just go to Google now and type data analysis course. You're going to find a lot of videos. Okay, which one is better? Which one should you take? Which of the teachers are you going to relate better with? There's a lot of stuff. So I'll recommend finding a structured course. But if you don't have money, you can just start with understanding basic Excel transition. I think it's natural transition from Excel into Power BI. Because Power BI is like an improvement, especially focus on data visualization. Because if you're learning Excel, you're going to learn Power Query and Power Pivot, because that's where you do your data modeling. That concept is also present in Power BI, so you can transfer that knowledge there. Power Query, then you do your modeling. Then in Power BI, you start worrying about writing complex DAX formula. Sometimes you may not need to write any complex DAX formula, depending on the kind of organization. And just do away with simple stuff because you're just a beginner, right? You're just starting now. That's a bit of SQL. You have Excel, Power BI, SQL. You're already a pro. What you need next is just the business acumen, right? Domain knowledge. How does this business work? Then one thing that's important, you should be a problem solver. I don't know how to explain it. You should be able to look at complex problems and break them down into simple bits. That is the way you're going to make progress as a data analyst, as a data scientist. Because sometimes, even as a data analyst, you're going to be doing a lot of things scientists will do, depending on the type of organization you work at. Because sometimes when you just take data analyst, you come in and you're experimenting and you're building models, machine learning models, and all that. Yes. So I'll recommend you should be able to break down complex problems into simple steps. Then you should also be someone who is able to know how to find for solutions. Most of the time, you're going to check Google a lot because you want to solve something and you don't know how to do it, and you started like 3 or 4 of your friends and they don't know it. Now you have to check Google. So if you know how to ask the right questions on Google, you know how to break. So sometimes you see a very big problem, you just need 5 different formulas to support what you already know to solve that problem. So if you can't get it, you won't solve it. That's just basically it.
Okay, awesome. So listen, I'll say thank you for honoring our invitation, and hope to invite you for future sections and everything. So I'll just say, do have a lovely weekend ahead, and do have a lovely week ahead. Sorry, and bye everyone.
Bye, everyone.
So I'll
Thank you
stop.
very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye.